The ballroom was full of light and noise the night Miriam Adeyemi decided she was finally, completely done. She stood near the tall windows with a glass of champagne she had barely touched, watching Dominic Eze move through the crowd. He laughed loudly at someone's joke. He touched shoulders, shook hands, leaned in close when he spoke, as if whatever he was saying was the most important thing anyone in the room would hear all evening. People responded to him the way they always did. They smiled wider. They stood straighter. They gave him the floor without him even asking for it. Miriam had spent 3 years watching people react to Dominic that way. She used to feel proud standing beside him. Now she just felt tired. She turned toward the window. Outside, the city lights stretched far into the dark. She could see her own reflection in the glass, and she noticed something that surprised her. She was smiling. Not a polite smile, not the practiced kind she had learned to wear at his events. A real one, calm and quiet, and entirely her own. She took a slow breath and thought, I am ready. 3 years earlier, Miriam had believed in the kind of love that arrives like a sudden change in weather. She had not been looking for it. She had been too busy building her architecture firm from the ground up, too focused on deadlines and client meetings, and making sure her name meant something in her industry. Love had not been on her list. Then she met Dominic. It was at a charity dinner organized by mutual friends. He walked in, and the room seemed to adjust around him. He was tall and confident, and spoke with the kind of certainty that made people feel like everything was going to be fine. Someone leaned over and whispered to Miriam that his family was one of the most powerful in the region, that he ran 3 companies before he was 35, that everyone called him the Alpha, a nickname he had earned and clearly enjoyed. He found her standing near the buffet table, not trying to impress anyone, reading the label on a bottle of sparkling water with genuine curiosity. He said, "You are the only interesting woman at this dinner." She had laughed. A real laugh, surprised out of her. She should have walked away then. She would think about that later. She did not walk away. What followed looked, from the outside, like something beautiful. Dominic pursued her with patience and attention. He remembered the small things she mentioned in passing. He showed up at her office with lunch on days she forgot to eat. He told her that her ambition was one of the things he loved most about her, that he had never met a woman who knew so clearly what she wanted. She believed him. She had no reason not to. The relationship moved quickly, the way rivers move when the ground slopes steeply. Before she fully understood how it had happened, they were sharing an apartment, sharing a life, her world and his pressed together until it was hard to see where one ended and the other began. And still, for a long time, it felt like love. But love can be patient. Erosion can be patient too. The difference is what gets left behind. It did not happen in one moment. Miriam would understand that later, when she had enough distance to look back clearly. It happened the way water shapes stone, slowly and without announcing itself. The first thing she noticed was how her feelings began to feel unreliable. When something he did upset her, and she said so, he would listen with a calm expression, and then explain, gently, why she was misreading the situation, why she was being too sensitive, why her reaction was bigger than the thing that caused it. He never raised his voice. He was always reasonable. And slowly, without realizing it, she began to double-check her own emotions before she expressed them. She began to ask herself, "Am I overreacting?" before she let herself feel anything at all. The second thing was smaller but just as steady. He had opinions about everything in her life. Which clients were worth her time, which projects were too risky, which friendships were a distraction. He offered these opinions as concern, as love, as the natural interest of a man who cared deeply about the woman he was with. And because he delivered them that way, she received them that way, at least for a while. Her best friend Zara noticed before Miriam did. Zara flew in from London once a year, and every visit she watched Miriam, the way a person watches someone walking too close to the edge of something. On one of those visits, over a late dinner, Zara set down her fork and said carefully, "He is not afraid of your success, Miriam. He is just making sure you forget it belongs to you." Miriam defended Dominic. She listed his good qualities the way someone reads from a prepared document. Zara listened without interrupting and then said, "I know. I just wanted to say it out loud." That night, Lying awake long after Dominic had fallen asleep, Miriam stared at the ceiling and felt something shift very quietly inside her. Not a decision, not yet, just a small, honest light turning on in a room she had kept dark for too long. The moment that changed everything happened on an ordinary Thursday. She had a major site presentation that morning, the kind that had taken weeks to prepare, the kind that could bring in one of the largest contracts her firm had ever seen. She had told Dominic about it 4 times over the course of 2 weeks. He had nodded each time. He had said, "Yes, of course. Good luck. I am proud of you." The presentation went well. Beautifully, actually. The clients asked all the right questions. Her team had been sharp and prepared. She drove home feeling the specific kind of happiness that comes from doing hard work and having it land exactly the way you hoped. She walked through the front door, and Dominic was on the phone. He looked up when she came in. He held up one finger, the universal signal for wait a moment, and turned back to his conversation. She stood in the doorway and looked around the apartment. His trophies were on her shelves. His preferred brand of coffee was in her kitchen. His framed photographs had replaced the ones she had taken down to make room. His silences filled her evenings. His schedule shaped her weekends. She thought, when did this happen? She thought, how long have I been slowly disappearing? She went to the bathroom. She ran the tap and stood in front of the mirror for a long time, just looking at herself. She did not cry. She felt something quieter than crying, and deeper than sadness. She felt clarity. She thought, I already know how this ends. I have known for months. I have just been waiting for permission. She looked at her own reflection and understood, maybe for the first time in years, that she did not need his permission. She did not need anyone's permission. The decision was hers, and she had already made it. She just had not said it out loud yet. That was the night Miriam Adeyemi began to leave. She did it carefully, the way she did everything that mattered. Not with drama, not with confrontation, not with the kind of scene that gives one person power over another. She moved her most important files to her office, one folder at a time. She had a quiet conversation with her lawyer about the lease agreement. She called Zara and told her everything, not to ask for advice, but because she needed to hear her own voice say the words. She said, I am leaving him, and the words were steady and sure, and she felt more like herself in that moment than she had in over a year. She transferred her heart, the way a careful person transfers something fragile, slowly, without rushing, making sure nothing broke in the process. 6 weeks later, she told Dominic it was over. He did not react the way she expected. She had prepared herself for anger, for coldness, for the quiet withdrawal he sometimes used when he wanted to make her feel responsible for his mood. Instead, he looked genuinely confused, then dismissive, then, for the first time in all the years she had known him, something close to frightened. You cannot just walk away from what we have, he said. I already did, she told him. I am just telling you now. He tried everything then. He talked about what they had built together. He said that connections like theirs did not come along often. He said she was making a mistake she would regret. He said she would not find another man who understood her the way he did. He spoke for a long time, with the confidence of a man who had never once been told no, and had it stick. She listened. She did not interrupt. She did not defend herself, or argue with him, or try to make him understand, because she no longer needed him to understand. Understanding from him was not the thing that would heal her. She had stopped needing things from him weeks ago. That was the whole point. When he finished, she said, I hope you find what you are looking for, Dominic. I genuinely do. She meant it. That was the part that surprised her. She left the apartment that evening with 2 bags. The rest of her things she arranged to collect later. She did not cry in the elevator. She did not cry in the car. She drove to Zara's hotel and knocked on the door, and when Zara opened it and looked at her face, they both understood that something had been completed rather than broken. They ordered room service and talked until 2 in the morning, and Miriam slept better that night than she had in over a year. The weeks that followed were not easy. She will not pretend they were, not even in the version of the story she tells later. There were mornings when she woke up reaching for a life that was no longer there, her body still living in the old routine, while her mind was trying to build a new one. There were evenings when the apartment she rented felt too quiet, and she questioned herself in the dark, the way people do when they have made a brave choice, and the bravery has worn off for the day. But underneath all of that, steady and persistent, was something she had forgotten was there: her own voice, her own preferences, the particular way she liked her mornings, slow and quiet, with strong tea and no conversation, the work she had been putting off because it required a focus she had not been able to find, the friendships she had let go quiet because they did not fit into the shape his life required her to take. She let herself have all of it back, slowly, then all at once. Her firm grew. She took on the contracts she had been hesitant about, the ambitious ones, the ones that stretched her in ways that felt good. She hired 2 new architects who were younger than her, and brilliant in ways that made her happy rather than threatened. She traveled once, briefly, to a city she had always wanted to see, and she walked through it alone, and ate wherever she felt like eating, and stayed in galleries for as long as she wanted, and it was one of the best weeks of her life. Zara visited again, and said she looked like herself. Miriam understood exactly what she meant. It was 18 months after the night she left, when Miriam's firm won the National Design Award. Her name was on the building. The actual building, etched into a small bronze plaque at the entrance. She stood in front of it on the morning of the ceremony, and put her fingers on the letters, and felt a fullness she did not have the exact right words for. Zara flew in again. They celebrated with jollof rice and too much wine, the same way they had always celebrated, the same way they had talked through the hard things, and Miriam thought about how some people in your life simply stay, not because circumstances keep you close, but because the friendship is built out of something honest. Dominic sent a message the day after the award was announced. It was gracious and brief, and said he was glad to see her doing well, and that he had always known she was capable of great things. Miriam read it once. She did not reply. Not out of anger. Not to make a point. She did not reply because she had nothing she needed to say, and because silence, when it comes from a full life rather than an empty one, is its own kind of answer. At a company dinner later that year, a younger woman at her firm named Adayeze came and sat beside her. Adayeze was talented and sharp, and working through something in her personal life that she had not fully named yet, but that Miriam recognized from the inside. They talked for a long time, about architecture and ambition, and the particular exhaustion of trying to hold your own shape when someone else is always offering you a different one. Near the end of the evening, Adayeze asked, quietly, how she had known when it was time to leave. Miriam thought about it for a moment. She said, I did not know when it was time to leave. I just noticed one day that I had already left, in every way that mattered. My body just needed a little time to catch up. Adayeze nodded slowly, and Miriam could see something settle in her expression, the way something settles when you finally hear the thing you already knew, but needed to hear from someone else. The ballroom from that earlier evening had long since faded in her memory, the way events do when you have moved so far from them that they belong to a different version of yourself. But she still remembered the window, and the city lights, and her own reflection looking back at her with a calm she had not expected. She had walked into that room as someone waiting to be finished with something. She had walked out of it free. Dominic would tell the story his own way, in the years that followed. He would say she was the one who got away. He would say he had never quite understood her. He would say, with a fond kind of regret, that she had been too independent, as if that were a flaw and not the whole point. Miriam would not argue with his version. She was not in it anymore. She was somewhere better, somewhere with her name on the wall and good friends around the table, and mornings that belonged entirely to her. She had walked away smiling. He had never known she had already left. And the most important thing, the thing she would carry forward for the rest of her life, was that she had done it for herself, quietly and completely, before anyone could tell her she wasn't allowed to.